2 weeks before my wedding, my fiancé vanished. Not a trace. Then I found out where she was, and the sheer audacity of it all shattered everything I thought I knew about us. I, a 24-year-old man, was supposed to be married just 3 days ago. But instead, everything is over because Mia, my fiancé, also 24, did something so utterly messed up it's still hard to believe. We'd been together for 5 beautiful years ever since college, and earlier this year we got engaged. I was on top of the world, so incredibly pumped for our wedding, for our future. That is, until 2 weeks ago when my world imploded. I woke up one morning and she was just gone. No note. No text. No explanation. Panic, cold and sharp, immediately seized me. I called, I texted, but got nothing. Worse, her phone was off for an entire day. I reached out to her family, frantic, but even they had no idea where she was. Her friends? They just didn't respond. Initially, I convinced myself she'd just gotten cold feet, maybe ran off to clear her head. But as the hours dragged on, a more terrifying thought crept in. What if something truly awful had happened? I was moments away from reporting her missing, my stomach in knots, when late that night, around 4 a.m. I think, I finally stumbled upon the truth. She hadn't even bothered to tell me herself. I found out through an Instagram post. One of her friends had posted a flurry of pictures, showing them all partying it up at some bar. Lucky for me, they'd tagged the bar, and when I looked it up, my blood ran cold. It was in Spain. Spain. I was absolutely raging. Here I was losing my mind with worry, imagining the worst, while she was getting absolutely wasted with her friends thousands of miles away. I texted her immediately, fury thrumming in my veins. I told her I knew exactly where she was, and if she wasn't on the very next flight home, the wedding was off. I poured out a long seething message about my disappointment, how she'd ghosted me for a full day, not even having the common decency to inform her fiancé before jetting off on some vacation with her friends. I was beyond mad, and I didn't hide a single bit of it. But even then, she didn't respond right away. I had to wait until the next evening for her to finally call me back. And I swear it was one of the most soul-crushing phone calls I've ever had. Because when she did call, instead of showering me with apologies and scrambling to fix the catastrophic mess she'd made, she just made everything infinitely worse. That's why the wedding was canceled. When I picked up, my voice was ice. She immediately picked up on my tone, but instead of acknowledging her glaring mistake, she instantly got defensive. She claimed her college friends had been planning this impromptu trip for ages, and had only told her after they'd paid for everything. She knew we'd discussed bachelor and bachelorette parties before, and I'd made it clear I wasn't keen, so we'd agreed not to have them. But apparently, a few days before this trip, when her friends contacted her, she just knew she had to go. It would have been rude and inconsiderate to refuse after all their arrangements and money spent. Rude? What about me? The fiancé she was leaving in the lurch? And the kicker? She'd known about this trip for almost 3 days before she left, and still hadn't told me. My anger flared anew, and I started yelling, raw frustration pouring out. Even then she showed no remorse, just doubled down on her defensiveness. She admitted she knew I wouldn't have agreed if she'd discussed it with me, which is why she absolutely had to hide it and leave. She even tried to claim she tried to call me after landing, but her phone was acting up, and then she just forgot. Forgot. How could something as monumental as telling your fiancé where you were just slip your mind? Especially when you knew you were doing something fundamentally wrong. For some unfathomable reason, she just couldn't grasp the gravity of her actions. She kept defending herself, saying she'd only ever been with me since she turned 18, and she deserved to have some sort of life experiences before finally settling down. I had no idea what she was even blabbering about anymore. After a point, I was just completely fed up. I reiterated my ultimatum. You get on the next flight home or we're done. No wedding. Her response. She wasn't coming back on the next flight because she and her friends had paid for a 2-week vacation. She'd only be home a few days before the wedding, and I just had to deal with it. Before I could even process that, she hung up. When I tried to call her back, she ignored me. I spent the next 2 days relentlessly texting her. A mix of desperate pleas and furious accusations, until I finally just gave up. It was crushingly obvious that partying with her friends was more important than her fiancé, more important than the wedding we'd poured months of planning into. I told her family everything, and they tried to intervene to get her to see sense, but she ignored them too. So with a heavy heart, I did what I had to do. I called off the wedding. I didn't make any formal announcements. I just messaged every single guest, letting them know the wedding was canceled and, more importantly, why. I specifically asked them not to contact Mia about it, to let her find out the hard way. I handled the vendors, paid the cancellation fees, telling myself I'd get the money back from her eventually. But what truly mattered was teaching her a lesson. By the way, if you're still with me after all that emotional chaos, make sure to hit that subscribe button. More unbelievable stories like this one are always coming your way. My parents weren't happy. They wanted me to wait to talk to her when she got back. But I was too angry, too hurt to even consider it. For the record, we'd never had problems like this. Sure, we'd argue over petty stuff, but we always worked through it. That's why we'd been together for almost 6 years. I never doubted her, never doubted us. When she said she wanted life experiences before settling down, I felt an icy stab of betrayal deep in my gut. A couple of days later, she finally returned from her trip. She came straight home, but I refused to let her in. I stood inside behind the closed door, telling her to go away. We argued through the wood. She was saying I couldn't do this, that the wedding was in days, that we needed to sort it out. And that's when I opened the door. I needed to see her face when I broke the news. The wedding, I said, my voice steady, is off, and you have no right to be shocked. I told you this is what would happen if you didn't come home. Her face crumpled. The shock quickly morphed into devastation. Within seconds, she was sobbing, begging me, saying I couldn't just dump her after 6 years over something like this. She apologized, promised to do anything at all if I would just marry her. It took every fiber of my being, but I knew I couldn't forgive her. I just shut the door. She stayed outside, crying and begging for me to talk for a good 20 minutes before finally leaving. She's staying with her parents now, completely shattered. And that's where the guilt started to creep in. Her parents have kept in touch, telling me she's refusing to eat, won't leave her room, only asks if I've agreed to see her yet. They don't say it outright, but I hear it in their tone, in my own parents' voices. They all think I was too hasty, too harsh. And after the day my wedding was supposed to be, I started wondering myself. Everyone on the guest list, except her Spain friends, had received my message about the cancellation and the reason why. Most just consoled me. But a few, who were close to Mia, forwarded my message to her while she was still on her trip. She hadn't taken it seriously, thinking they were bluffing, trying to scare her into coming back. Now of course she regrets everything. She's been sending everyone her own messages, apologizing profusely, saying she knows she's let everyone down, especially me. Since I blocked her, she's been begging others to relay her apologies. She says she still wants to marry me, doesn't care about the grand celebration, just wants us. She knows she made a huge mistake and promises she'll never repeat it, just needs a second chance. People kept forwarding these texts, and the guilt gnawed at me, especially after my actual wedding day. Waking up that morning knowing what should have been was gut-wrenching. Our 6-year relationship just gone. On top of that, my phone was flooded with consolations and Mia's apologies. I felt completely empty, like my entire world had been flipped upside down. I tried to talk to my parents, hoping for comfort, for them to tell me I did the right thing. But they were visibly upset, emotionally invested after all these years. When I finally broached the subject, they were silent at first, and then they told me they didn't think I'd done the right thing. My world truly came crashing down. I was already drowning in doubt, and their disapproval was the absolute last thing I needed. I've been in a strange mental state ever since, second-guessing everything. I couldn't even talk to my friends. That's how I ended up here, needing unbiased opinions because I was just lost. Was I the bad guy for canceling our wedding after my fiancé went on an impromptu trip 2 weeks before, then refused to come back when I asked? Thank you to everyone who commented. For days have passed since I posted, and I've been doing a lot of thinking. I spoke to my parents about what they said, telling them how much it hurt. I didn't think it was fair for them not to stand by me, to make me feel like I was the one who overreacted. After all, pretty much everyone online was outraged on my behalf. My parents heard me out, but they still didn't understand. They just said they felt what they felt. How could they feel I was in the wrong? My fiancé literally took off on a holiday without telling me, then refused to come back when I told her to. That's a huge deal. It's not like I didn't warn her of the consequences. She knew I'd call off the wedding. My demands weren't unreasonable, especially considering we were about to get married. They kept saying they got that I was upset, but it was a petty reason to cancel a wedding and end a 6-year relationship. It wasn't easy for me to do either. The least they could do was be supportive. I tried talking to them a couple more times, but each conversation devolved into a fight. I'm done trying. If they can't see my side, I can't help it. They can believe I'm the bad guy, but I know what I did and why. Life's already hard enough right now without them adding to it. I also had to speak to friends who kept forwarding me as messages. As politely as possible, I explained I was going through a lot and didn't need those messages making things harder emotionally. I asked them to stop. I didn't care if I came off as heartless. I just wanted it to stop. The messages started to make me feel obligated to talk to Mia, and I wasn't ready. I do things at my own pace. Most friends understood and apologized, saying they felt bad for Mia but would respect my wishes. But a couple of our mutual friends? They attacked me, calling me self-centered, saying I was destroying a relationship purely on an ego trip. These people had known me for years. If that's truly what they thought, I had nothing to say. If my own parents misunderstood me, I couldn't expect anything from these friends. I didn't bother arguing. I learned my lesson with my parents. I just blocked them and moved on. I know everyone thinks Mia is the victim and I'm the heartless control freak. It's shocking that even after knowing the entire story, people still sympathized with her. But it doesn't matter anymore. The bottom line is the relationship is over. I'm not marrying her. And I've started making my peace with that. It's been 2 weeks since I last spoke to my parents, and they haven't tried to contact me. Most other people passing on Mia's messages have either given up or been blocked. But a couple of days ago, completely out of the blue, the friend she went on that trip with contacted me. I'd blocked them all when I blocked Mia, expecting never to hear from them. They emailed me apologizing for everything. They said they realized they shouldn't have made such a hasty plan and roped Mia in. They should have given her good advice instead of encouraging her to ignore me and keep enjoying her vacation. I don't know if they were truly apologizing or just digging her grave even deeper, because when I realized they had actually encouraged her not to come back and to ignore me, my fury reignited. I didn't care what they said. I found it utterly pathetic that Mia, a grown woman, allowed herself to be misled into a situation that ruined our 6 years together over one stupid little trip. She wasn't a teenager succumbing to peer pressure. She knew exactly what she was doing. I was so mad, I didn't even bother reading the rest of the email. I just deleted it. I didn't need their apology, or their predictable pleas to forgive her. If they'd been her real friends, they would have cared about our relationship and told her to do the right thing. Besides, it was too late. I'd already started moving on. I'd accepted the relationship was over. There was no going back. The last thing I needed to do was tell her when she could collect her things. That would be the final closure. I hadn't felt ready for a while, but last night, I finally contacted her parents and told them she could come by any time this week in the evening. They tried to get me to talk to her on the phone, but I hung up before they could. This was the final step I needed to move on. And now that it was done, I didn't need to talk to her anymore. I was done. Today, Mia finally came over to collect her things. I knew it would be difficult, so I mentally braced myself for the worst. Thankfully, it wasn't as bad as I'd imagined. I'd contacted her parents 10 days prior, but it took her over a week to show up. In the meantime, her friends, realizing I hadn't read their email, started texting me from burner phones. They skipped the initial apologies and cut straight to the chase, begging me on Mia's behalf to just talk to her, saying she missed me and would do anything to fix things. I just blocked them again. After a few days of calls from various numbers, they finally stopped. Then last evening, Mia's parents called. They told me she'd be coming today. And surprisingly, they even apologized. They wished things had worked out differently but accepted that this was how it was. That was genuinely shocking to hear. I guess Mia had finally given up trying to win me back and accepted our fate. I felt a little pang of sadness, knowing this was truly the end, but it was what I'd wanted. She arrived a couple of hours ago with her dad. I stayed in the guest room instead of the living room, trying to avoid seeing too much of them while they packed. It took about an hour and a half. After all, we'd lived together for 4 years. Once they were done, Her dad left us alone to talk, as I'd requested. I didn't have anything specific in mind, just wanted to say goodbye to get that final closure. And that's what I did. It was incredibly awkward. She started to cry, then told me she was so sorry things ended this way and wished she'd been a better partner. But it was too late. Seeing her cry, I felt my own eyes well up, and I didn't want that. So we quickly hugged, wished each other the best for the future, and then she left. After she was finally gone, I cried for about an hour before I could pull myself together. But I needed that. I needed to see her one last time, to end on a less bitter note than before. It's still not a good ending, of course, but it's not as terrible as I expected. I wouldn't say I'm happy now, but I'm content that I got some closure. Everything still hurts, but I know it's not the end of the world. I'm still young with so much to look forward to. So, I'm throwing myself into my work, trying to stay distracted and just moving on. Hey guys, it feels really weird posting an update almost a year after I was supposed to get married but didn't. Looking back, I genuinely think it was the right decision. I'm doing so much better now. In the beginning, it was incredibly difficult. I wasn't speaking to my parents, and the person I thought I'd spend my life with was gone. My mental health took a massive hit. But with the help of a few good friends, I slowly got back on my feet. I started going to the gym, working, and partying equally hard. A couple of months after the breakup, I started therapy. Since then, I've come a long, long way. I wouldn't say I'm completely healed, but I'm definitely dealing with everything better. My parents and I still haven't spoken. They've even blocked me everywhere. I guess their ego is too strong to admit I made the right choice for myself. But it's fine. I don't expect anything from anyone anymore, and frankly, I don't care. Mia and I hadn't spoken either, and I'd kept her blocked. But funnily enough, we ran into each other at a restaurant a couple of weeks ago. We hadn't seen each other in so long, and it was incredibly awkward. She was out with her coworkers and I was with my friends. I was honestly considering leaving when she walked up to my table and said hi. She made an effort to be nice, and so did I. It was surprisingly okay. And that's exactly why I'm writing this update right now. Because I remembered how badly I was doing around this time last year. But now I'm pretty content with the life I have. It's a strange journey, finding peace after such a massive betrayal, and even stranger navigating family and friends who don't understand your choices. What would you have done in my place, especially when your own parents disagreed with your decision? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I really want to hear them.